everyone. This is Janine. She's a fellow thalassemia patient, and we're going to do an interview for the YouTube channel about her life with thalassemia and what she's gone through and endured, and how she's thrived through her life. So, hey, Janine.
Hi, John. It's good to see
Yeah,
you.
yeah, you too. You too. So tell me how's your life with thalassemia? How were you diagnosed, and how did you come to know about having thalassemia?
Okay, that's a very good question. All right, so to begin with, I was the last child of my parents' set of children. They had three daughters, and their first baby was born in 1960, and her name was Vivian, and she was diagnosed at 3 months of age with thalassemia. And my parents were very much involved with her care, helping her
Hmm.
um, through all the hardships she endured. And then when she was about 2.5 or almost three, my parents had their second child, and she did not have the disease, just the trait. And then
Hmm.
10 years later, I came around in 1973. So between 1960 and 1973, we experienced two different versions of growing up with Thal. So,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, so by the time I came around, my parents did not think that I was a child with thalassemia because my sister Vivian was diagnosed at 3 months of age, and I wasn't diagnosed until 6 months of age. So, having a sister in between us that did not ever get diagnosed, I think that they thought that they had, two children without the disease. So,
Mm.
I had, what did they say? They said that I had gotten sick and I didn't recover from my cold. I didn't bounce
Hmm.
back. And they took me to the pediatrician. My blood count was low. I don't remember the number, but they were advised that I needed a blood transfusion, and they started the whole process with me, and they jumped right in because they were very well experienced with how to care for a child with thalassemia. I mean, at that point, they didn't have any medication, but they did know that, you should transfuse your child and keep them at a certain hemoglobin so that they could grow. Whereas they did not
Right.
have that information when my sister was diagnosed. It was a very
Okay.
different experience from my
Same
parents.
for me when I was diagnosed, back in it was 1976, I think it was. My fetal hemoglobin hung around until I was about 4 years old. And then I got mono and I kept getting sick. And,
Yeah.
it was just something totally new for them and for
Okay.
me. And, it's just hard for our parents, I think, to get a grasp on what was going on at that point, and try
Yeah.
to
Much.
do their best for us.
Are you the child, like the only child in the family with it, or the oldest child with it? Do you have siblings? I actually don't know that about you.
Me, I have a sister that I think she's got intermedia. She was diagnosed with the trait or whatever, but she's in her 60s now, and she's just always anemic. Like her hemoglobin's in the like 7 and 8.
Uh,
She works, but she can barely function, and I just think she's not managed well, and she hasn't found the right physician. And you know, and when you're working professionally, it's hard to get time to go see a specialist to do all
yeah,
this stuff. So I don't think she's probably you know worked hard at trying to really find somebody. So
yeah.
yeah, that's where she's at. You mind me asking how old you are now?
No, I don't mind at all. So I'm
Okay.
51.
Do you get transfused, and how much blood do you get?
Okay. Okay. So I get transfused every 2 weeks like clockwork. And
Hmm.
it's like my body just knows. It doesn't matter what that count is. It just knows, like,
Yeah.
you might have hemoglobin, but it may not have a lot of oxygen in it, and it's just depleted. And sometimes, like, they'll say your count is 11 and you can't get blood tomorrow. And I'm just like, no, there's got to be a mistake because my body is telling me it's time. So,
Yeah.
you know, I am very regimented with my transfusion cycle. And I wish it was different. That I wish I could just, go a few extra days here and there, but I really get very fatigued. I go in
Mhm.
now and my blood count is around 10 and a half. What is that, a hemoglobin? And um, I get 2 units of blood. I get maximum of 650 cc's. And I always
Mhm.
ask the doctor, like, where does all my blood go? I'm a very tiny person. And how does it
Mhm.
not last in a little body like mine? um,
Right.
so, um, like, my ferritin is probably like around 800, which I think growing up, it was always around like um, 1300, like that. Because I was very good about starting my pump when I was 5, and I just always did my medicine.
Right. Are you still
Having
taking Desferal, or are
Oh,
you
yeah,
on?
no, I'm still on Desperol. I tried the oral chelators, but they didn't work on for me because I couldn't tolerate them. I have like a a deficit with sulfur. I can't process sulfur. So I process medication very differently. I guess
Mhm.
it has something to do with the way it goes through the liver area. I don't really
Mm.
understand why
Right.
it
But it
goes.
looks like the Desferal is working very well for you.
Yes, thank God. And
Good.
I'm like, pray it never goes away because, as uncomfortable as it may be to have to mix medicine, put a needle in your stomach for a long time every night, I actually feel the best on it, and I have such good results with it. Um,
Mhm.
like I'm so thankful for it.
Well, like when you transition as a child into adulthood, like, a lot of us have to change physician and things like that. How was that for you?
Okay, so that's a really interesting question where I am in my life right now because I just went for blood yesterday. No,
Mhm.
excuse me, Tuesday, and that was my last transfusion in my pediatric hematologist office. Um,
Right.
so
Like right now?
yeah, right now,
Oh, wow.
like I'm living this transition. The next time I go back to the center for the first time in my life, but I'm trying not to freak out about it because I'm trying to remember that as a child, my sister and I went to a hospital in Brooklyn called Long Island College Hospital in, I guess, downtown Brooklyn. And when I was in my early 20s, there was like a lot going on with that hospital that wasn't really benefiting us anymore. It was very crazy experiences that we experienced there. And we ended up going to Winthrop, which is in Mineola, New York, in Long Island, and we stayed in the same office. But very funny, hematologist switched. So we started with one doctor, and then he went to another hospital, and then at that hospital, that doctor came in, and he was my doctor. His name was Dr. Weinblatt. He was my doctor for like 20 something years,
Okay.
and um, with all of the hospitals becoming these big conglomerates, like we have NYU and we have Northwell and whatever else is around here, they have bought all the hospitals up, and their administration is changing everything. And basically, our hematologist came to us individually and said, like, we have a new administrator and they're not comfortable with us as pediatricians and pediatric hematologists overseeing adult patients getting
Mm.
transfused. And they're saying that you have to go to an adult infusion center. So I'm just trying to like keep in my mind, like, I've done this before and it
Right.
worked out well, and this will work out well too. um just, I have to
Yeah.
be positive because it's very scary.
Yeah. It's easy to think about all the negative, and then when you get there, like, oh man, well, why was I so worried? It's not so bad. But sometimes, like, what I found to help me was to go visit these places before, I have my first appointment. That way you get to talk to people and, like, kind of exchange your expectations and stuff like that. Sometimes that's helped me. But
Yeah, I did do that actually,
yeah.
and
Oh, good.
it was very therapeutic. I met a really nice woman that manages the floor, and our doctors were very, very open to hearing our concerns as a group of their patients, and then
Hmm.
taking our concerns to their team because we're going upstairs in the building that we're in, and having conference about each one of us that was going to be transitioned there, and like what our rates are, and what, little habits we have. Like, for instance, when I go to get my transfusion, I always ask for a heat pack, and I sit like 15 minutes with like this really warm heat pack on my arms, because
Hmm.
it helps to expand my blood vessels,
Oh
and then
yeah, yeah.
it's easier for them to get the needle through. Because, after all these years of scar tissue, 51 years of being jabbed with a
Right.
needle, and especially as a little girl, we were in a different hospital setting where we didn't have these like necessarily trained professionals sticking us with needles. We had like what did they used to call them, like residents, like first year residents, second year
Yeah,
residents,
yeah.
that didn't always know how to put a needle in, and we didn't have catheters. We had like those steel needles,
Right. Yeah, I remember.
and they were really, really painful, especially when they went through your vein. Not to get descriptive, but I have a lot of
Right.
trauma with
Oh
getting my
yeah.
needle started, and I was very like comfortable in explaining that I have a past of, with this disease, and I know what I need to make me feel comfortable, and I hope that you can meet me halfway. And in that conference that I had one-to-one with this woman, she was very like empathetic and very compassionate, and she made
Good.
me feel safe. So I'm just like praying that
Good.
the transition will go well. And
Right.
for us that are doing this transition, like, we're still going to have our pediatric hematologist as our doctors. We're just not able to get our transfusions in their office anymore. So
Hmm.
to me, that's a big deal, having
Yeah.
to change my treatment center. But
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
just going to be positive that it's going to
Yeah.
go well. It's going to go
Yeah.
well.
Right. So yeah, I mean, sometimes you just think of the worst, but I think it's gonna work out for you.
Thank you
Like, how was life growing up with thalassemia for
for
you
our
and
family. Oh,
yeah,
well, okay.
and your
So
sisters?
I really feel that I was at an advantage having my sister Vivian, 13 years older than me, and she was a go-getter. Um,
Hmm.
she really did a lot for our thalassemia community. Um, she was an inspiration to me. Like, if Vivian got through it, I'll get through it. And my parents were very
Right.
optimistic people. Like, they also were go-getters, and they did a lot to help the community. So
Right.
when she was diagnosed, my parents were so young. They were in their early 20s. They were like brand new to marriage, brand new parents, and found out that their daughter had a disease that no one could really tell them what to do. So they met with, I think it was the doctor that invented anemia. I'm not even sure anymore.
Uh-huh.
I can't ask anyone anymore. But I know they went
Right.
to Pennsylvania, and basically the doctor said to my parents, "Listen, we only have a name for it. We do not know what to tell you to do to treat your child. So these are
Mhm.
your options. You can either transfuse your daughter, and she won't live that long because she'll get compromised by iron overload, but while you have her with you, she'll be healthier.
Right. Now,
Or,
what year was? I'm sorry to
yeah,
interrupt. What year was this approximately?
1960,
Oh, okay, six. All right.
60. And then,
Yeah, just to clarify where we're at, because there's the timeline of thalassemia. A lot of changes are made over,
oh, yeah,
a few years at a
absolutely.
time. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So in 1960,
Mm.
they didn't have a name for. I mean, they only had a name.
Right.
They didn't have a treatment plan, and they said the other option was, don't transfuse her. They figured she would live longer without transfusions. Like, so my parents were like, well, let's transfuse our child, so that she's healthier while we have her with us on this earth. So
Right.
basically, my parents ran blood drives, and they joined. I think it was called the Brooklyn chapter at the time, of other parents who had children already older than my sister. And some parents had, been working together. My parents joined forces with them, and they, spoke to everybody about thalassemia. And they got donations of all different sorts. And so basically, my sister was able to like carry on, and she made her milestones that the doctors never thought she would. And,
Hmm.
you know, she ran into complications. Like I believe when she was 3 years old, she had her spleen removed. She had three heart failures. She had liver issues. She had her what did I say? She had her spleen taken out. She was always like knocking on death's door. Um,
Hmm.
but
I'm sorry.
always,
I know it's hard to talk about, I'm sure, but
well, I mean, she overcame it, which was so amazing. So when I came along when she was 13, and
hmm.
I was diagnosed and growing up and seeing her thrive. Like
Hmm.
nothing stopped her. She went away to college. You know,
Wow.
she after college, she went to California. She wanted to be an actress. She, she
Ah.
worked for Mattel Toys. I mean, she sold BMWs in California to actors and actresses. And she only came home because my mom unfortunately had become ill and I was still little and my father needed help. So she left everything and she came to be with her family. And while she was in Arizona, where she had gone to college, her transfusion cycles were much different than what we did here, what we do here. And she would go in on a Friday, and she would get Desferal through the IV with all the other kids that had thalassemia. They'd all spend the weekend together. They would get their Desferal, and they would get their blood, and then they would go home. And during that time that she was there with these other kids that were younger than her, they, like I did, looked up to her and asked her questions like, you know, how do you make friends when you have thalassemia? Or how do you have a sleepover at someone's house? Or,
Right.
what do you tell a boy you like? That, how do you tell someone you have to get blood transfusions? Now she was like their mentor. When she came back to New York, she was like, there's a lot of young children like my sister, growing up that have questions. And like I could ask her anything, but could others? So she ended up forming with other people, like a support group, which started out as TAG and, grew into TIFF. It
Yeah.
was this international federation where doctors and
Right.
people
That's great.
all came together. And like, she was a go getter. So, like, here I am,
Mhm.
born 13 years later, and I have the disease that she has, but I'm definitely not getting hit with splenectomies and heart failure and
Yeah.
spinal meningitis and whatever else because I started Desperol when I was 5, but she couldn't start until she was 18. And so,
Wow.
it
Wow.
was a really big difference.
Right. Is that when it came out? When she was
Yeah.
18? Or? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, she was getting stuff with like variations of Desperol, like in shot form, not
Yeah,
like
I remember taking those injections in my thigh when I was a
intramuscular.
kid.
Yeah, that's what she
Yeah.
had to do. And it wasn't working because that's not how, like for her, like a shot,
Right.
it has to go in slowly. And yeah, so it wasn't working for her. But she endured what you've endured. And so basically for me, like I felt like I was sailing through because I knew that she struggled so much. And yet, like I was okay. I just had to do my medicine. And that was a really
Hmm.
big deal because when I went to my previous hospital, there were a number of children my age or a little older than me. And it was really hard for adolescents to stick themselves with a needle every night. And I remember my doctors asking me, like, how do you do it? Like, how do you put your needle in every night? And I'm like, oh, I have a technique. And they're like, what's your technique? I'm like, well, I get ice cubes and I numb the area first. And then I look for the point of the needle and I make sure it's turned a certain way. And then I just
Hmm.
like slide it through my skin. And I remember them looking at me like in awe. And I never really
Right.
understood why because I'm still a little kid. But now
Mhm.
looking back, I'm like, they were probably like, look at her. And they were like, can you share that with the other kids here? And I was like, I guess so, if you want me to.
Right.
But yeah, so for me, I mean, I just felt very protected by having an older sister to kind of
Hmm.
like show me what to do. But when she passed away, she was 43 and I was about 30. Um, yeah, I mean, our birthdays were 2 days apart. So she would have been 30, she would have been 44 and I was turning 31. I had just had my daughter, she was a year old. And when my sister passed, like that really was a very hard time in my life because then I lost my confidant I lost my
Right.
mentor. I lost my like encyclopedia of how do I handle this or that. Like she just told me what to do all the time. And then I had to
Hmm.
navigate my adult life like on my own. And that wasn't so fun.
Yeah.
Motherhood, having a baby, um, my job, juggling my family, my transfusions, like that, I had to learn how to do on my own.
Right. I bet that's tough, for a woman and a mom, to go through all that and trying to raise a family. I mean, I can't imagine how tough that is. So,
Well, I think it's tough. I think also for a man because you're also probably putting a lot of pressure on yourself to be able to support for your family and be
mhm.
there for them physically. And we all know like those who have this disease, like we get knocked down when our blood count goes down. Like it's hard for me. My perspective of what I experienced was I went to work. I was a teacher for 25 years, and I looked like everyone else every day, except every 2 weeks, my coloring would change. But nothing else. No matter how tired I was, I still had to get up. I still had to go to work. I did my job to the best of my abilities. I came home, I took care of my family, did put dinner on the table somehow, whether I cooked it or I
Hmm.
ordered it in. There was food, got my kids ready, did their homework with them, like nothing stopped except for the 6 hours when I went for my transfusion. And at
Right.
the time, it was after work.
Hmm.
So, it's not easy. It's
Right.
not easy for any of us that have to
Right.
work every.
Yeah. I remember I used to work, I took like a really hard job in anesthesia. And then I used to, I had one point in my life where I worked these call shifts from 3 p.m. to 7 a.m. and I would go get transfused and then
Right.
go to work at 3 and work all night. I'm like,
Oh,
man,
wow.
I just no more. But I
Yeah.
used to do that, and luckily they were able to do it in that amount of time that I could get back to work. But yeah, I mean, those struggles are real, and we've endured a lot as patients over the years, and I think it makes us tougher for it too. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
yeah,
I'm proud of what I was able to do. I'm sure.
yeah,
I see the
exactly,
difference though as I get older. I'm not really able to do that much like I did. In fact,
right.
I recently cut back because when I was working, I'd say probably like 10 years ago, I would get my transfusions after work and then go to work the next day. But I wasn't bouncing back after my transfusion so easily anymore.
Well, it gets harder.
My
Hmm.
body ached, muscles, joints.
Hmm.
My head was so heavy. I was exhausted. And I used to make a joke of it to people that knew that I had gotten transfused the night before. They would talk to me and I'd be like, delayed processing, give me a second. I couldn't
Right,
respond fast. My reaction
hmm,
time wasn't really that good. And my
right,
patience wasn't so great because I was struggling. And so eventually I went to my school district and I explained that to them. And I said, I really need to like figure something out. I want to work and I can work. I just need some kind of modification to my job.
right.
And
Hmm.
luckily, like they allowed me to do an FMLA intermittently. And I took the day, either the day I had to get blood, if it was on a Friday, off, or I took what did I do? I think I took the Fridays off because I used to get
Hmm.
blood on Thursday nights and then I take Friday off, or I still took the Friday off, but that was the day I would get blood.
Right.
But then my weekends were compromised.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it was just very hard. And as a
Hmm.
professional, like I felt terrible. I was a special ed teacher, a special education teacher, and I felt terrible that every other Friday I couldn't be there and do my job. And
Right.
no one put pressure on me. I'd always make sure I had everything prepared for my students so that whoever stepped in for me would just have to like follow my directions. But it
Hmm.
wasn't me that was there.
Right.
And I just felt like I was letting people down, even though they would say I wasn't. It was just me. I couldn't be there to do it all. And as I
Hmm.
got older, I realized like I just can't do this all, and something's gonna give. And I don't want it to be my family, my children,
Hmm.
my marriage. So my
Right.
job was the easiest place to like kind of wiggle a little time away from it so that I could take care of myself. And
Right.
and it was just a lot, like
Yeah.
emotionally and physically. It was a lot.
So, what does your life look like with thalassemia from now on? Like, are you interested in any new therapies or medications coming out, or what are you looking forward to with thalassemia?
Well,
Anything?
yeah, I would love, I would love to not have to get blood transfusions anymore. Like,
Right.
I really would love to be able to be cured in my lifetime.
Hmm.
But like I mentioned earlier, I don't really do well with a lot of medications. So at this moment, I know that the therapies that are out for that involve
Right.
something called busulfan, which is
Yeah. Yeah.
sulfur, and I can't process sulfur. So that's really
Right.
not
Right.
therapy for me.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
I'm really hopeful that they're going to create like a protein that would kind of like do what this chemotherapy does.
They're they're trying to come up with, and I think it's promising.
Yeah,
There's a lot of things, even without gene therapy. The Mepatavad, I think it's called, that's
yeah,
coming out, and the Reblozyl. Some people are taking that. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of things around the corner that are coming out too. So
yeah,
yeah, it's a better future for us.
yes. Well, it's a better future, but for me, a lot of these medications have sulfur in them. And
Hmm.
so that really upsets me that I know I can't take a sulfur drug. So I
Uh-huh.
really hope that there'll be something that they can create that's like cleaner for my body so that I
Right.
participate in those therapies too. Because I'd hate to be the only thal patient still getting blood transfusions in America. If
Yeah.
anyone else is able to, extend their transfusion schedules or maybe never need the transfusion again and I'm still getting transfused, I'd be pretty upset.
Right. Right. Yeah, I hear you. Do you see a specialist about your like sulfur allergy or anything like that? Do you see like an immunologist
So
or
I,
anybody?
my sister Vivian, who I mentioned earlier, she was always like ahead of the curve, and she found this biochemical nutritionist back when she was probably in her 20s. So I was like a teenager of some sort.
Hmm.
And, he really was helping her with her issues or whatever was going on with her. So when I turned about 23, I started to go to him. And the fact that he's a biochemical nutritionist is like he understands the pathways that nutrition medicine goes through your body, and he was able to isolate like where the defects are for me, and he has figured out like foods and vitamins that I can take that change my pathway. It doesn't fix it, it's still blocked.
Hmm.
It's not for, like right now there's nothing that will unblock it, but he's learned that if I eliminate certain foods that are high in sulfur, that I can still process and get nutrition by having the food break down using different pathways in my body. So he's
Hmm.
not like a typical doctor. He's more of like holistic care. He's
Right.
you know, he thinks very differently than.
Hmm. Well, I think it's good to have somebody like that too, with those insights as well.
The
You know.
problem is that they don't always understand each other. Like,
Right.
my hematologist will say that you should try the new drug that's coming out. And then I said to her, well, I would love to, but I heard, I saw the makeup of it. It has sulfur in it and I can't process sulfur. And she's like, well, we can just like give it a try. And I'm like, okay, we'll talk about it when we get it and people are on it. Let's see how people do that. She agreed, we agreed with that. But the reality is that she doesn't truly understand like when I have sulfur, how my body actually takes such a beating because it can't get it out of
Hmm.
itself. And so then it like breaks down my cells and my body can't heal. So like all the scarring that I get from the needles every 2 weeks, like those scars don't go away. There are so many, like, what I call them, like, invisible effects that I know is happening because of that, that they're not seeing in me.
Hmm.
And then
Right.
sometimes I can come across like I'm being a troublemaker and being Debbie Downer, or, I'm just being not easy to work with. But that's not the case. Like, I just
Hmm.
know my body really well.
So, is there anything else you'd like to say to anybody who's curious about thalassemia or who has thalassemia? Or, what would you like to tell people?
Oh, well, thank you for giving me this platform. I mean, I think
Well,
it's
that's what it's about.
I think it's really important that we all come together and support one another,
Hmm.
because we've all walked a mile in each other's shoes when it comes to thalassemia. I mean, I may
Hmm.
not understand how someone who has intermediate, or now they have alpha and thalassemia, I may not understand those conditions, but there is a level of um, maybe fear or discomfort that we all experience. And so it's really
Hmm.
good to just be there to support one another and listen to each other. And, like, you gave me that insight that I could go and speak to the people at the transfusion center before I start, which was great advice. Maybe I wouldn't have thought about that, until
Right.
someone said it to me. So I think that definitely is, we should all support each other, and we should try to keep ourselves optimistic about our future,
Hmm.
because, like you said, there's a lot coming down the pike all the time. I know that researchers are always working to make our lives better. And it's not just people with thalassemia that they're going to cure, it's other people with other illnesses as well. So there's
Right.
really, like, a strong um, desire to find this cure for all of us. And I guess also, like, let's work hard until every one of us is cured.
Right.
Like, we can't, like, I know gene therapy has helped a lot of people, and I'm sure it will continue to do that. But, like,
Mhm.
it may not be the right choice for everybody right now. So, like, let's not give up and say, oh, we found the cure, we're done. No, like, let's keep
No.
going to make that treatment process even better for the next
Right.
generation, or
Exactly.
the next person that's going to go for
You're
it.
right. Things are just getting better and better. I mean, it's all in what works for each person, and you know, hopefully one day we don't have to worry about. Nobody has to worry about thalassemia, at all.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, live your dreams. Live your
Hmm.
dreams. Don't let it stop you. I mean,
Right.
I feel like I've always been hesitant to travel outside the country, but I did it.
Hmm.
And I didn't go for like 2 weeks, though I would have liked to, of like 9 days, but at least I got to experience something that I never thought would be okay for me to do,
Right.
because I did have fear. What if something happens to me? What if I can't get back?
Right.
Yes, okay,
Yeah.
move on.
And that's right. And that's always my philosophy too. Don't put limiting beliefs upon yourself. Just have those hopes and dreams and live them the best way you can instead of thinking what bad could happen or what if I do this and just all of those negative thoughts that come into our heads.
Yeah,
It's good to have a just believe in yourself and believe in the future. So,
yeah, I agree with that. I think that's very positive.
anything else you'd like to talk about?
I guess I just want to say I'm thankful that, we're all here in this together. I'm
Hmm.
thankful for my family, my husband, and my 2 children, for the parents that I had, my sister, my family. And, thank you to the community for giving us this beautiful life that we get to live. And
Hmm.
you know what? I want to tell the younger children that are growing up with it, and younger parents having children diagnosed with it, like, they'll be okay. Look at us,
Hmm.
and
Right.
it's okay.
Yep.
It's okay.
Awesome. Well, Janine, I really appreciate you coming on here and talking with me. I wanted to leave it really open for you, to talk about your concerns and what you're going through, and I'm really thankful that you came on the call with me.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to let me have this forum. I hope I did
Mhm.
like a good enough job that,
Yeah.
I gave insight to other people, or, someone could see how I live and they can compare it to how they live. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your other interviews with other thal patients and learning
Right.
from them as well.
Yeah, I'm getting there. It's a little slow process, but we'll get there.
You're
So,
getting there.
as
It's
many
awesome.
people as we can.
Yeah.
So,
And I wish you luck on your gene therapy that you're going to have
thank you.
soon. When is that going to be?
Yeah, it's gonna be in March, so fingers crossed. You know,
Good for you. That's amazing.
yeah,
You have a whole army of people supporting you.
yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
all right. Well, I'm gonna sign off, and you have a good night. Okay.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.